I was completely absorbed in the passionate gestures of my paintbrushes when the sharp buzz of my phone vibrated on the table, shattering the creative bubble that had enveloped me. The dazzling brilliance of the paints on the palettes and the characteristic smell of the stretched and prepared canvas. Each color, each movement I reproduced, was not just a technique. They were fragments of my soul, expressions of a journey that had been unfolding over years. But, at that moment, the world of my artistically painted dream had become distant and threatened by the insistent vibration of my cell phone. I raised my hand, hesitant, before answering. The call brought me a familiar voice, but heavy with frustration and despair. Anna, my sister. The same sister who always mocked my lifestyle, who laughed at my artistic aspirations and turned my passion into a joke. A cruel irony manifested itself when she, at the bottom of her emotional and professional well, asked me for help. "Clara, I know you can save me," she said, and her words were laden with a pungent bitterness that I couldn't ignore. More than a request, it was a cry of despair. Inside me, the storm of emotions built up. I was immediately offended by Anna's sudden vulnerability. How dare she show up at my doorstep, asking for support, when for years I had been the target of her destructive criticisms. I, Clara Miller, a 36-year-old visual artist, had finally found my place in the art world, a vibrant gallery, a success that had its own vibrant resonance. And now she, the older sister who had always minimized my dream, appeared asking for help like a lost child. A deafening silence hung between us as I pondered the situation. I picked up my brushes with renewed fervor, the tips of the bristles dancing on the canvas, while part of me planned how to respond to that plea. My heart pulsed with a mixture of indignation and a strange pleasure at seeing the irony of the situation. Anna Miller, the successful sister who always scorned what I, in her view, pursued with such avarice. The truth is that my gallery was a monument to hard work and resilient passion for art, one she never understood. "We need to discuss this, Anna. Don't come to me with that pity party now," I replied resolutely, tasting a bitter taste as I uttered those words. The coldness that now enveloped our interaction was sharp. My tone, though firm, hid the storm of conflicting feelings churning within me. We spent years mired in a cycle of competition, full of comparisons. While I battled against reefs and storms in search of a place in the sun in the art world, Anna chose a safer path, increasingly fixated on a corporate career that I knew disillusioned her. Silently, I waited for her validation, but she always made a point of transforming my success into mere ephemeral art. Something she had said was temporary, and deep down, worthless. It was as if each of her laughs echoed a treacherous echo in my mind, resisting giving up, to the point of turning my spirit to stone. As we spoke, I could see the traces of a new despair forming on her face. The professional difficulties she was experiencing, coupled with her shifting perspective, told me a new story. The story of a worn-out Anna, struggling in an unforgiving world. This clash of realities didn't make me feel humble or forgiving. On the contrary, it sharpened my determination. The situation could change, but my story wasn't intertwined with hers. As I continued to discuss the possibility of helping her, something inside me ignited. Success was never a test of sibling love. This phrase echoed, reverberating in every wall of my mind. It was time for me to finally take the reins of the situation and, who knows, transform the toxic relationship we built into a new kind of art. The art of revenge, almost a burning porridge, simmering beneath a serene surface. I had a new blank canvas in front of me. The future was calling me, and this was my chance to rewrite the narrative. Anna never knew that her weakness could give me the strength to shape what I wanted to build. Each brush stroke on my painting was not just a color applied to the canvas, but a tactical preparation to create the story I had decided to live. "Let's see how far you're willing to go, Anna," I thought, as the image to be portrayed took on defined contours in my mind, the plot of charting a different path unfolding before me. Memories of my childhood danced in my mind, a beautiful mosaic of experiences that shaped who I am today, but which also revealed the deep cracks in my relationship with Anna. The figure of my older sister was like a mural painted with intense colors, but each shade came laden with a sharp criticism, a belittling of what I sought. While I surrendered to the world of art, Anna remained focused on a conventional path. "This is a hobby, Clara." I still heard her voice resonate in my mind, each syllable like an echo that grew stronger with each success I achieved, each exhibition I held. Time was a cruel artist. As I reached new heights, she sank deeper into years of discontent, a life she used as a shield. I remember one day in particular, returning from my first major exhibition. I was radiant, full of hope, imagining a night where I could feel truly alive. But upon entering the house, her burning words hit me like a storm. "How many times will you delude yourself, Clara? At some point you'll realize that art doesn't pay the bills." The expectation of support, a genuine hug, dissolved into a wave of disappointment. Her coldness made me question whether I truly deserved the platform I'd been given. With each new achievement, Anna grew more distant, anxious to secure her own position in society, in a corporate career that brought her no joy, only security. I remember seeing her light fade gradually, as the gleam of ambition transformed into resignation. While I ascended, planting a seed of success in my gallery, Anna navigated a sea of uncertainty, losing herself further in her despair each day. The success she so painstakingly pursued would become a dark labyrinth with no exit. Her criticisms, once unbearable, became fuel. It felt as if every contemptuous word she uttered about my art and my life choices was a blow intended to bring me down. But what she didn't know was that each blow lifted me higher. Despite the discouragement I saw in the construction of her life, her energy wouldn't hurt me. On the contrary, it fueled my art. The contrast between our lives dealt with profound dualities. She, the pragmatist who believed success was defined by stability. I, the artist seeking expression in the fragility of everyday life. It occurred to me that it wasn't just a matter of success, but of different pursuits, each reflecting a side of the same coin. While I struggled in exhibitions, under the pressure of critics and the public, which could be both a welcoming embrace and a cold wall, Anna navigated corporate meetings, wooing clients. The weight of responsibility was tangible on her shoulders, but there was also the pain of nonconformity that she preferred to ignore. I never stopped seeing her humanly, but the dehumanization she imposed on herself made the relationship increasingly tortuous. The thought of the support we provided each other was no longer a possibility. Then the news began to spread, and I learned that Anna was finally facing the consequences of her choices. The first time I heard about her dismissal, the impact was a mixture of sadness and a sudden flash of hope. She was lost, and at the same time, it reminded me of the true path we both should consider. Our sisterhood shared space in the pain, a cycle of despair that was not just hers, but ours. Laura, my friend and art critic, became a constant support during this confusing time. In every conversation we had, her words sounded like an empowering anthem. "You're more than an artist, Clara. You're a winner, and your story deserves to be told." These words hammered inside me like a mantra pulsing at a rapid pace. I needed to turn them into action, and that's where the idea began to take shape. I used to see the space between Anna and me as an insurmountable chasm, but gradually I managed to see it as a chance to create something new. What unfolded in my mind was a proposal that could not only change the landscape of our relationship, but also give Anna a new voice, a new role in the narrative I was about to create. Art, which had always been the waiting room of pain, now transformed into a bridge, a chance to understand each other again, to repair what was broken. This idea ignited me like a flame. What if I could transform our disagreements into vibrant compositions? Apathy could generate a new narrative instead of a continuous abyss. By inviting her to participate in my next exhibition, we could create space for the stories we carry. There would be a conversation between the paintings that would reflect not only my journey, but also hers, more authentic and alive. With each email and every conversation with Laura, the need for transformation grew within me like an irresistible call. Looking out the gallery window, I imagined the possibility of diverse, vibrant compositions intertwining. If I could get Anna to participate, if I could show her that art is not just about the painting, but also about what is hidden behind it, then I could give her the opportunity she so desperately needed, to rediscover herself, to redefine herself. The emotion of thinking that I could give Anna the chance to rise from the ashes with support and a new chance was comforting. After all, if art is one of the purest reflections of our experiences, then I could mold what is between us into something beautiful. At the same time, I promised myself that fragility would not be the end of our relationship, but the beginning of a redemption. This reinterpretation of our history would not only be a gift for me, it would be a gift that could manifest as a rebirth for Anna. With ardent determination, it was time to act. The chasm would not be a burden, but a bridge where we could both find new meaning. Art was once a battlefield between us, and now it could be the fertile ground for the rebirth of a sisterhood that, who knows, could still flourish. And I knew a new beginning was waiting to be drawn. Each stroke prepared to paint the new narrative that had sprung forth in my mind. I woke that morning to sunlight filtering through the curtains of my gallery, softly illuminating the hanging paintings in a way that almost hurt my eyes. Each of my works had become a testament to my struggles and joys, but now I knew I needed to do more than just keep going. My mind raced, full of ideas and renewed determination. I needed to find a way to invite Anna to join me. With that goal in mind, I plunged into the task of planning my next step, which now seemed clear. The first thing I did was contact Laura. Let's be honest, if anyone had a sharp eye and a strategic mind in this art world, it was her. I arranged a meeting for the afternoon, and anticipation grew within me like a burning flame. The phone rang, and her enthusiastic voice echoed from the other side. "Clara, I was so eager to see you. You're going to love what I've got planned." In that conversation, I shared my idea, inviting Anna to participate in the exhibition and, more importantly, to be part of a collaborative project. Laura's response was a mixture of excitement and caution. "That's an incredible proposal, Clara. But remember, it's an invitation. You need to be prepared for all possibilities. Anna might not be easy to persuade, especially with all the history between you two." I faced the challenge and thought about what I knew about her. Anna had never been good at accepting help, even less so when her self-sufficient image was at stake. So I started researching what was happening with Anna's career. I found some of her old projects on blogs and social media, a small window into seeing her at her best. There was a part of her I had always admired, someone who had talent but was simply struggling with circumstances. Through this, I realized that her dismissal had not only been a blow to her job, but to her self-esteem, a layer of fragility that, until then, had not been visible to me. With Laura's help, I explored the weaknesses and opportunities that could be used to create our collaboration. I decided that my initial approach should be direct and welcoming. Instead of approaching her with old prejudices or resentments, I needed to frame it as a new beginning. And so, I sent Anna a message with a simple invitation: coffee at my studio. I believed that a familiar environment could serve not only as a safe place for both of us, but also as an inspiring space, surrounded by the art that had been my healing. Anna's response took longer than I expected. The first time I read the text, a knot formed in my stomach. The tone was cautious. "Clara, I like the idea of meeting, but I can't promise anything. How's that?" Deep down, I knew there was much more being said between the lines of the message. Her apprehension was palpable, but her determination was also present. On the other hand, a whirlwind of thoughts and questions began. Did I really want this plan to work? Were my feelings towards her ready to be confronted? However, the idea of Anna coming to my studio became irresistibly exciting. I began to strategically arrange the space, leaving all my works in plain sight. The background of my life and my experiences should invite her to see how art can heal, transform, and unite, instead of separating. The day of the meeting approached, and as I spent hours tidying and organizing, I began to formulate a script in my mind. It wasn't just about art, but about transforming pain into something beautiful and welcoming. Finally, the day arrived. The tension was palpable as I waited for Anna. I tapped my feet, almost as if I wanted to shake off the accumulated anxiety. When I saw her enter, there was hesitation in her steps, but a renewed interest in the way her eyes scanned the gallery. Her presence was a mixture of nostalgia and harshness. The same look that once shone had now become darker, but I was determined to rekindle that light. "Hi, Clara," she said with some apprehension, as her eyes swept over the vibrant compositions I had created. Her response echoed in my heart, but I didn't let it shake me. "Hi, Anna. I'm so glad you came." The upbeat tone wasn't just a facade. It was a way of opening the door to the new. I remembered what Laura had said. An invitation is the first key to change. As we talked, a noticeable tension slowly dissipated. I showed her several works and explained each one. I spoke not only of the textures and colors, but of what each composition meant to me. Throughout the conversation, I noticed a small spark in her expression as she began to connect with the stories hidden behind each painting. I kept the conversation light, full of emotion and nostalgia, until finally, I took courage and planted the seed of my proposal. "Anna, I'm planning a new exhibition, and I'd love for you to participate. I believe we could do something incredible together." My words were imbued with sincerity. The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever, and her breath quickened at an anxious pace. I knew the request wasn't simple. It carried all the heavy history we had built. "Clara, I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I don't want to mess up what you've created," she said, her gaze dropping to the floor. I adopted a firmer yet caring posture. This was the moment. I couldn't hesitate. "Anna, you've always been a part of my story, and I don't want to do this without you. We can turn this into something truly beautiful." Thus, we planted the first seed of a new narrative, a seed I hoped would sprout into more than just an art project, but into a renewed friendship and understanding. What I didn't know was that this perfect blend of vulnerability and ambition would lead me down a path far deeper than I could have imagined. The embryo of our collaboration had begun to form, but the real battle was only just beginning. The promise was in the air, as was the uncertainty, but with each word, we knew we were about to transform everything that was misshapen and dark into a vibrant new light. What began as an invitation might, who knows, reveal a new era of love and self-expression within each of us. The transformation that began in those first outdoor conversations quickly blossomed into an invitation to a journey I knew would change our lives. Conversations flowed easily. The walls that had long stood between us began to dissolve, and it was as if art was acting as a healing agent, a bridge unexpectedly uniting us. As ideas began to bubble up, a sense of excitement mingled with something deeper and more reflective. I was about to take on the role not only of an artist, but also of a sister and friend. Over the following weeks, my world became a blank canvas, filled with artistic trajectories and heartfelt dialogues. We began meeting frequently, each new encounter transforming into an experience brimming with creation and discovery. The park, which was initially our refuge, now transformed into an open-air studio where colors and emotions ran wild. And I realized it was through mutual understanding that we would build the narrative we so desired. "Let's delve into the deepest aspects of our experiences," I proposed to Anna one day, as we sat on a park bench with our materials at hand. Her eyes glinted for the first time, full of determination. She grasped my idea immediately, eager to explore the roots of the feelings that held us captive. With that in mind, we decided to dedicate ourselves to understanding the meaning of being an artist in a world that often fails to validate feminine sensitivity. The first task we decided to tackle was the creation of an art journal, a space where each of us could freely express our emotions and reflect on our artistic journeys. This journal would become our arena of struggle and redemption, a space where vulnerability could flourish without judgment. The idea of sharing thoughts, fears, and aspirations offered the possibility of a profound rebirth. Anna brought her journal on a sunny afternoon, and we spent hours discussing our entries. We asked questions that dug deep and reflected on things we often preferred to ignore. "What does art mean to you?" I asked, noticing the hesitation in her gaze. I always thought it was a means of expression that had to be perfect. However, the more I create, the more I see that the beauty of art lies precisely in its imperfection, she admitted, with a growing gleam in her voice. It was as if she were shedding layers that had been hiding her. In this intense exchange, our connection strengthened as we revealed experiences filled with insecurities and comparison. It was a meeting of souls who longed to validate their own feelings in a world that frequently preached the opposite. Recognizing the fragility in our stories became a catalyst for restructuring what had previously been a vicious cycle. We became investigators of our own narratives. We explored childhood memories, feelings of inadequacy, and the external expectations that shaped our perception of art. By revisiting these experiences, we opened space for dialogues that revealed what we truly desired as artists and sisters. "I don't want us to feel trapped by these patterns of comparison," Anna exclaimed one day, the fervor in her voice resonating through the air. It was time to leave the past behind and strive to build something meaningful, and I felt she was beginning to free herself. Thus, the collaboration became a continuous exercise in freedom and creative expression. We created works that told our stories. A blank wall became a space where we could explore and talk about what emotions meant in our art. Colors and textures became favorites. The strokes of her uncertainty mingled with mine in the form of letters written on the walls, creations that gave voice to what we were afraid to share. The space where we directed our energies was highly therapeutic, but the path was not without difficulties. As we began to work together, challenges arose. One afternoon, I asked Anna how she felt about her own internal criticisms, which still seemed to manifest. "Sometimes I feel like everything I do still isn't good enough," she admitted, her voice choked, as if a profound truth were slowly emerging. In that moment, it was clear that the past hadn't disappeared, and the voices that surrounded us still echoed in the caverns of our minds. To address this, I suggested we engage in a practice of analysis, where, during our creative meetings, we would openly express our criticisms, but as a way to grow together. This could help us dissolve doubts and work through our insecurities together. The discussions became an act of care, and the criticisms that were once wounds became opportunities for a new understanding. As weeks passed, the creations took on new forms, and our narrative was being shaped live. The growing energy and new ideas painted a vibrant picture of what we hoped to project. The art was now more than just work. It was a testament to our battles, to the ability to build something beautiful from pain. Just as Anna and I explored these artistic frontiers, we also decided to visit museums and galleries seeking inspiration and connection with other artists. Each space taught us something new, and the stories we learned seemed to intertwine with ours, as if we were weaving a network of experiences that complemented our own. The culmination of all these experiences became palpable. As the days leading up to the exhibition drew closer, the sensitivity and authenticity in our work became evident. The canvases, once mere surfaces, became a true testament to our collective struggle. When I shared the ideas we'd developed together, our faces lit up as we realized our capacity for change. The anticipated day of the presentation drew near, and expectation hung heavy like a cloak of promises. And so, on a sun-drenched day, we found a space for what I hoped would be a rebirth not just for us, but for all women who would feel connected to our art. The project that began as a personal invitation had evolved into a serious movement with the potential to touch many hearts. Creative voices also seeking representation would find a safe and welcoming space, and we became not just storytellers but a platform for other artists. I immersed myself in research and marketing strategies, recognizing that as we articulated our concepts, we also needed to address the externalization of our message to a wider audience. We began to plan a visual proposal and how we would articulate our stories. This involved creating promotional materials that not only described the essence of the art we created, but also the experiences that brought us there. As the day of the exhibition drew nearer, a true community began to emerge between us, and what was once a space of rivalry and distrust became a creative laboratory of empowerment and change. The walls of our gallery now echoed turnarounds and resolutions. That art is not just the representation of what we see, but the interpretation of our lives and struggles. Meanwhile, hands were shaping all the emotions that had been locked inside us for so long. What was once a space inhabited by shadows now breathed vibrant life. Had we finally managed to paint a new landscape of connection and love? And would the work we were about to present be a true reflection of who we were? Not just as artists, but as sisters, friends, and women seeking light in an often oppressive world. With each new passion we brought to our canvases, we grew and rewrote the story of sisterhood we knew. And so, we mapped the narrative to be told, drawing the beautiful and challenging contours of what can arise from pain, from vulnerability. The music of growth was still playing, and the power to transform and reimagine was in our hands. What we hoped for from the exhibition wasn't just art, but a declaration of love for what it truly means to find a space where we can flourish together, embracing our stories. The essential had become reality, and on this path, we were one step away from sealing a deal that would change our lives and the lives of many. Exhibition day arrived, and an electrifying mix of anticipation hung in the air as I entered the gallery. Every corner of the space seemed to reverberate with the energy of the weeks that had passed, the afternoons of working outdoors, the whispers of deep conversations, and the sessions of laughter and frustration alongside Anna. The walls displayed our creations, each a fragment of ourselves, and each painting told a story of struggle, hope, and a reclamation of authenticity. I could feel the excitement pulsating as the guests began to arrive, and the atmosphere was alive with collective expectation. As the first people entered, it was like opening the door to a new universe. The space quickly filled with a vibrant mix of faces, friends, family, critics, and strangers, all gathered around the art that meant so much to us. It was as if each of them was there, not just to observe, but to participate in the narrative we were about to unfold. The murmur of conversations, the soft music in the background, and the soft light filtering in from the windows created an almost magical atmosphere, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion flood my heart. Alongside Anna, I decided we should begin the presentation of our exhibition with a speech that captured not only what we had created, but what it meant to us. With the microphone in hand, the initial insecurity was quickly overcome by the passion we carried. Today, we're not just here to show art. We're here to share a journey. I began, my voice firm, and all eyes turned to us. A journey that took us down a path full of challenges, but also of self-discovery and validation. Anna joined me, and words flowed between us like a dance of king and queen. We shared our longing to be seen, and how art served as a platform for that. I mentioned the struggles we faced over the years, both individually and together, how our insecurities drove us apart, and paradoxically, brought us together. The silence in the room was profound, and the faces before us seemed absorbed in our stories. That connection was palpable, and I realized we weren't just two artists in a gallery, but two sisters reunited on a collective journey in search of hope. A silent echo surrounded us. Our souls were merging, and everyone's experiences in the room were beginning to intertwine with ours. When I finished speaking, the audience was silent for a moment before erupting in applause. That reaction wasn't just a sign of acceptance, but a celebration of our courage and sincerity. With an encouraging look from Anna, we sat back to watch the audience interact around the artwork. That's when I saw a woman approach, eyes welling up. "This is beautiful," she said, pointing to one of our paintings. As she spoke, others began to join in, sharing their own stories of struggle and overcoming adversity. The room began to fill with voices, each weaving a new layer of meaning into the art. What was once an individual expression now transformed into a collective conversation of empowerment and acceptance. A little later, an art critic I'd always admired, Laura, introduced herself. I looked into her eyes and almost trembled with anticipation. "Clara, Anna, you've created something truly special here," she said, her tone sincere. "This exhibition doesn't just present your work, it makes the audience connect with their own stories. That's the true power of art." With Laura's validation and the encouraging smiles around us, I realized we had accomplished far more than expected. However, As the celebrations and discussions progressed, a small shadow of insecurity began to grow in the back of my mind. What would come next? How could we sustain this energy? Not only Anna's and my art, but the conversation we were starting. With that pressure looming over me, a new desire began to emerge. A desire for our message to spread even further beyond the gallery, beyond the close circle of friends and family. We needed to create a broader space for the voices of the women artists community. It was during a particularly bittersweet conversation about this idea that Anna surprised me. "What if we expanded this?" she asked, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. "We could start a collective project, maybe a support network, a place where other artists can express themselves freely." The idea sparked like a flame in my brain. It was exactly what we needed, an initiative that would recognize and amplify the voices that, like ours, had often been silenced. As the night wore on, we began discussing the details of how we could make this idea a reality, sketching plans on papers scattered across the table. Our gazes were bright and focused, and I realized we had truly changed each other. What had begun as a rivalry dissipated around a shared desire to change the world through art. With each new idea that emerged, a fresh wind of hope filled the room. The idea of bringing together other women artists who face the same challenges filled us with vitality. The longed-for support network we envisioned could further create spaces for others to share their struggles. A platform where stories could emerge without fear of criticism, in a context of compassion and acceptance. We were creating not just art, but a space where vulnerability could flourish. As we ended the night, the feeling of triumph mingled with the new urgency of action. The exhibition wouldn't be an isolated event, but the first step towards something much bigger. We committed to making this new vision a reality in the weeks that followed. What began as healing a wound from the past had transformed into a vibrant space of dialogue, support, and empowerment. As we said goodbye to the gallery that night, I knew we weren't just closing a chapter. On the contrary, we were opening a new chapter in our lives. Together, we decided to increasingly invest our energy and creativity in creating this new platform, where artists could not only exhibit their work, but also connect emotionally and share their stories. The vision of the network was taking shape with each interaction we had, with each excitement we created around the potential dynamic. In the following days, we spent hours mapping out ideas for events, creating a calendar that could include workshops, talks, and, of course, exhibitions where women could share their journeys through art and feel part of a community. This new project would become a landmark of transformation, not only for us, but for every woman who, as she approached, would become part of our story. It was clear that art had the power to heal, to unite, and most importantly, the mission to celebrate unity amidst diversity. What began as a simple desire for reconnection had transformed into a powerful movement of women rising together. And so, with a new purpose pulsing in our hearts, we were able to keep alive the flame of love, expression, and sisterhood. The path ahead unfurled like a blank canvas, and we were more than ready to color the pages of our future together. With each step, stability sprang from the ground that had once been painful, and reborn, we became a beacon for what could truly be lived. Finally, we were ready to give others what we ourselves had never received, the assurance that in art and in life, we should never feel alone. With the success of our first exhibition, Roots and Wings, and the growing momentum of voices in art, the feeling that we were about to begin something even bigger was more palpable than ever. In the days following the opening, the gallery not only remained an art space, but transformed into a true center for connection and female empowerment. Each meeting, each workshop, and each conversation became a new opportunity to build deeper relationships, not only with the participants but also between ourselves. As we organized the next event, a series of art workshops for women, the excitement was almost electric. Our intention was to create a safe space where each woman could explore her emotions and express her creativity without fear of judgment. I knew this could be a crucial step for many who, like me, had fought fiercely to find their voice. Messages from women interested in participating began to flood our social media, and my heart warmed with each new registration. Anna and I met, reviewing the schedule of activities. Each name that appeared on the list was a sign that Voices in Art was becoming a real movement, and the awareness that we were going beyond ourselves filled the air with renewed purpose. "Look, Clara, we have more registrations than we imagined," Anna commented, her eyes shining as she received more positive feedback about the event. As we talked, the idea of hosting a panel discussion began to seem increasingly appealing to us. "We could invite some artists from our community to talk about their experiences," I suggested. Anna nodded in agreement. "Yes, that way, we can address the various nuances of struggle and overcoming, show how art was a turning point in their lives." In the days following the meeting, the enthusiasm only grew. Creating a platform for artists to share their experiences became more than an idea. It was now a mission. Initiatives like this could inspire other women who hesitated to follow their creative dreams. And as the event date approached, I created a space for reflection on our social media, encouraging local artists to share their own stories and challenges. The day of the workshop arrived, and upon arriving at the gallery, I was overcome by a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The place was more vibrant than ever. The beginnings of conversations echoed in the walls, and palpable expectations filled the room. When the first participants began to arrive, I prepared a welcoming environment, with art supplies arranged around the room. Small tables were covered with paints, brushes, and papers of different sizes. The aroma of fresh coffee hung in the air, helping to establish a comfortable atmosphere. As the women began to arrive and gather, a sense of community began to form. I looked around, observing the faces that reflected a mixture of nervousness and excitement. Right then, we weren't just people gathered to create. We were a collective of beings seeking connection and expression. As I greeted each one with a warm smile, I saw the smiles multiply. We began to introduce ourselves, and each woman was encouraged to share her own challenges and what brought her there. As I listened to their stories, a deep sense of empathy flowed through the space. As each one spoke, it was evident that the difficulties they faced were, in some way, similar. The common struggle for self-acceptance, the search for authentic voice, and the need for a space where their creations could shine was a shared sentiment. A revolutionary moment occurred when an emerging artist named Sophia, who hesitated to exhibit her work, stood up. "I don't know if I can say this, but art for me has always been a refuge, but also a place of people criticizing what was still too new for you. So many stupid comparisons," she said, with a slight tremor in her voice. "For a long time I hid behind anxiety, and here I found courage." Sophia's words echoed through the room and touched each of us, representing what many were struggling with at that moment. Anna, full of sensitivity, spoke. "That's exactly what we want to discuss here. Art should be a space of freedom, an environment where comparison doesn't exist." The energy increased, and the room was filled with voices, contagious with every word and laugh. The workshop became more than just an event. As the women shared their fears, joys, and aspirations, I began to see something profound happening in our collective. There were tears and laughter, but above all, a genuine connection. Art was uniting each of them in a way I couldn't have predicted when I envisioned that space. The day progressed, and each new exercise encouraged self-expression. With each brushstroke, more memories were created. I remembered our initial desire, a place where women could feel totally free to express their essence. At the end of the day, the gallery seemed to echo the emotions and stories that were now recorded on the canvases and papers. When the event reached its climax, I looked around and realized that we weren't just a collection of artists. We were women, bound by a narrative of support and love. After a long day of creativity and empathy, the group began to disperse, but not before exchanging contacts and promises of future meetings. Each farewell carried the hope of more encounters and conversations. The energy of that space still pulsed, a vibrant testament to connection and support. As we left the gallery, Anna and I exchanged smiles. "See? We really did it today. Let's keep this going. I want this collective to grow even bigger and for us to continue empowering these women. Let's celebrate art and all it can represent. As I contemplated the possibilities opening before us, a deep sense of accomplishment filled my heart. The day reminded us of the power of unity and vulnerability. Our experience at the gallery wasn't just about art. It was a recognition that every story has value, and when combined with others, can create something truly powerful. So, we moved forward without haste, but with a clear purpose. Voices in Art was about to become a symbol of empowerment. We would have the responsibility of carrying this message to the world, and we were determined to do this not only for ourselves, but for all the women who also wished to rise and be heard. Looking to the future, we realized that what we had built had become a community filled with love, support, and determination. We were more than artists. We were facilitators of a new era of expression and freedom. Each of us had our struggles, but together, we were indomitable. And so, as we walked through the halls of our gallery, feeling life pulsing in each painting, we began to imagine the next big step, knowing that the world needed to hear our stories and see our voices materialize in vibrant and authentic art. What could come next wasn't just a new opportunity, but a continuous revolution of expressions. For all who reached out to us, the promise of art would be born as an answer to finding their place and their truth among so many stories. And with that in mind, the dialogue finally became a song of hope we felt in our hearts, and the journey was only just beginning. With the success of the Roots and Wings exhibition still fresh in our memories, we began to shape the future of Voices in Art. The event had transformed into a vibrant space, and each workshop offered was creating a real impact on the lives of the women who reached out to us. The desire to continue this movement pulsed in our hearts. Anna and I were determined to transform these experiences into a new responsibility to be shared by artists everywhere. We then decided to organize a new series of events, an art festival celebrating female creativity. As we discussed ideas, we noticed that the energy in the air was permeated with enthusiasm and anticipation. We can organize panel discussions, workshops, and exhibitions, all at the same time, I suggested. Let's focus on inviting artists who will share their struggles and achievements. Anna nodded enthusiastically, and soon we were immersed in plans and sketches. The planning of the festival spread quickly throughout our network. As new registrations arrived, the excitement multiplied. We were blessed to hear inspiring stories from women willing to share their experiences through art. Empathy reverberated in every conversation, and the sense of belonging grew as more women joined our project. Meanwhile, the gallery was becoming a dynamic place of creative expression. The colors intensified, and the participants' works resonated with each other, forming a visual dialogue that intertwined. Each artist brought her unique perspective to the collective, and the diversity of experiences was becoming a powerful testament to what could be achieved when women united. We then decided that the festival would be more than just an art exhibition. Our goal was to create a space where each artist could feel safe to share her stories. To do this, we organized creative empowerment workshops that fostered open discussions about insecurities and fears. The participants would not only express their emotions through art, but also connect with each other on a deeper level. The anticipation filled the gallery as the day of the festival approached. I took some time to reflect on how much we had evolved since the beginning of our journey. The energy that was present in that gallery, that vibrant and welcoming space, was a reminder that love and solidarity can always triumph over pain and insecurities. On the morning of the festival, as I prepared, I felt a mixture of emotions. There was anxiety and a strong recognition of the importance of what we were doing. I looked around and saw so many women gathering, humidifying the air with their stories and hopes. The transformation that had taken place was palpable. We were now part of something genuinely larger than each of us individually. With the gallery full and everyone eager to begin, I decided to open our event with a short speech. Today is not just a celebration of art, but a celebration of all of us. Each brushstroke here represents a story of struggle and overcoming. Together, we are creating a support network that crosses the barriers that once separated us. The audience applauded, and the energy in the room grew even stronger, as if the applause was a call for each woman to allow herself to shine. The workshops began, and I was amazed to observe how the participants surrendered to the art. Sophia, who had now become a confident artist in her expression, led one of the first workshops. I remember seeing her confidently encouraging each woman to delve into her emotions. Vulnerability was being nurtured and nourished as they expressed themselves. At that moment, laughter and tears became companions, and the space finally transformed into what we had originally intended, a safe haven for everyone. That day, having shared their stories, the participants began to paint, sculpt, and draw, but they also connected deeply. Several women who initially seemed hesitant quickly opened up, and by the end of that first day, I knew we were creating a space where they could express the totality of who they were. The gallery walls resonated with laughter and words of encouragement. At the end of the festival, I looked at the exhibited works and thought about each story that was now immortalized on those canvases. We weren't just facilitators. We were agents of change, and there was a sense of community that now surpassed everything we knew and had experienced up to that moment. The impact of what we had built was far from over. As I said goodbye to the participants, a new sense of confidence filled the air. The festival wasn't the end, but the first of many steps on a collective journey. Walking home with Anna by my side, discussing next steps and the women we would need to reach, a feeling of purpose washed over me. "Clara," Anna said, "I feel this growing stronger. What we started here is just a glimpse of all we can do." I looked down the illuminated path, watching the city lights, and realized that our goal was no longer just exhibitions, but the connections we were creating. Each new event would become a celebration of female creativity and a resistance to oppression. And we, as facilitators of this change, had the opportunity to shape the future. If before we had the urgency to rise again, now we had the power to bring other women to this space as well. The idea that art could be a vehicle of transformation for so many others was enough to ignite a light in our future work. And so, as the sun set over the gallery in the distance, I knew the journey was only just beginning. Voices in Art was now more than a community. It was a love in evolution, a gathering of vibrant stories interwoven in a movement of freedom and creative expression. The future shone before us, and we were ready to embrace it, together, strong, and always the renewed union of art and empowerment.